Hi everybody. Thanks to all of you who took a look at the Hungarian Grand Prix review that I attempted to do yesterday. Um, did it. It was, as you can see, 1 hour 52 minutes of me talking and trying to break down and analyse the clips I'd actually recorded while I was watching the Grand Prix. Um, Only to then find out on upload that something had gone wrong with my audio, and after about 12 minutes you couldn't hear anything that I was saying. So rather disappointing, but here we go again. I'm going to try and restrict this one to around about half an hour and then probably do a part two. At the time I began that recording yesterday, we hadn't got the information through as to whether Max Verstappen was going to get penalised or not for crashing into Lewis Hamilton. And by the end of it, we had. So if you actually go to that video and kind of move the time bar along to the end, you'll see me going through the FIA document, which I'm now just going to do. Well, that's the official race result, and this is the FIA document relating to the stewards' appeal for Max Verstappen. And as I did say, Gary Connolly was one of the stewards. Here he is, Gary Connolly. And he was one of the stewards in Abu Dhabi 2021, and he is 100% corrupt. 100% corrupt. And there'll be people that will say, oh, you can't say that on YouTube. You can't say that about a person. Well, you can if it is true. If something is true, you can say it is not libelous. Gary Connolly, you are corrupt. If you believe that what I am saying about you is libelous, take me to court. I will demonstrate in front of a court that you are corrupt. So that's the situation. Okay, that you can attempt to sue me, you will lose. I have evidence that he's corrupt. For those of you that are new to the channel, this channel's purpose is to expose the true nature of the Abu Dhabi fraud. Now, many people just do not know it, they don't see it. Those of you that are long-standing followers of the channel, you'll know what my videos are all about. The realistic reason of me doing these Grand Prix reviews are to try and get greater exposure for the channel. And the reason for that is I need to get the message out to more and more people, the true nature about what took place at Abu Dhabi 2021. What we saw after Abu Dhabi 2021 was lots of people saying, oh, Lewis Hamilton has moved on, so should we. We should all move on as well because Lewis has moved on and so should we. And what are we watching? What have we watched ever since 2021? Well, we watched it throughout 2021 actually. When you rewind the clock and see what we were subjected to as fans of a sport, what Lewis Hamilton was subjected to as a competitor within that sport, was the sport broke its own rules to boost Max Verstappen, to harm Lewis Hamilton's chances, and set up a show. That's what really happened. And everything that we've seen since has been a contrivance. We see a team which has broken the rules is allowed to continue competing with an illegally developed machine. That machine was head and shoulders by far ahead of the opposition in both 2022 and 2023. It started 2024 by far ahead of the opposition too. And strangely, the other teams have now, some of them have now kind of caught it, or kind of caught one car, the other car's fallen off the grid. But that being said, we're still seeing flashes of extreme performance from that one machine. What's going on? Do you trust the sport of Formula One? Because I think if you do trust the sport of Formula One, you're a fool. If you trust the sport of Formula One, you're a fool. The show, right, the whole enterprise, is still the same people involved. Essentially, it's still the same people involved. It's still the same corruption. It's a contrivance. It's a contrivance. And what does that mean? That means we should all switch off. It means that maybe all of the drivers are all complicit with it. Well, maybe. Maybe. All we can do is observe from the outside, and I know that what we're watching, it's not as authentic as it should be. There's things that are going on which should not be going on. So what do? You shut up and accept it and enjoy it and just, make videos to say, oh, this is amazing, how exciting, or make videos going, oh, this is not acceptable, this is controversial, or you do something about it. If you are a fan of any of the drivers, many of us are fans of Sir Lewis Hamilton. The reason that we are fans is because over a period of time, that guy has demonstrated both his ability and his character. And that's something that we have grown to admire. And as a result of that, when you see a sporting icon who you admire in a situation where they are being sabotaged in any attempts to either break any of the records of the sport or have any future success in the sport, well, what are you doing? You're watching the demise of somebody's career. The last few years of their career is going to play out and effectively fizzle out into nothing because they're being blocked from doing something. That's not acceptable. That's not acceptable. And we as fans are just expected to swallow the lies and the bullshit that we're given. Now, no, I'm not willing to accept that. We know that it is corrupt and something needs to be done, and that's what I'm working towards doing. Unfortunately, life has got lots of different things that crop up in our lives, and certain things have to take priority. I'm hoping that over the course of the next couple of months, the situation in my own life can change, which will free me up to focus more on what I'm going to do about Abu Dhabi 2021. I'm not going to reveal that immediately because that's got to come out closer to the time. Okay? But if you're new to the channel, that's the purpose of this channel. This video that I'm doing now is completely different to the video I did yesterday, because every time we sit in front of a laptop, put the headset on and begin talking, you're in a different mood and different stuff comes out. So it is what it is. I'm going to do my best with this one. So we'll go through this document first, and then we'll go through a bit of an overview of the Hungarian Grand Prix, and then I'll go through them clips. But I'll go through the clips probably on the second one. But them clips demonstrate Max Verstappen's attitude, Max Verstappen's radio communications. They're not congruent with what we know. Well, they are typical of what we see of Max Verstappen. There are countless Grand Prix where we have heard and we've had displayed on our TVs these outbursts from Max Verstappen when things aren't going his way. When we look back to Abu Dhabi 2021 and we have Max Verstappen's onboards with his radio communications, they're nothing like what we see from Max Verstappen when things aren't going his way. And things weren't going Max Verstappen's way in Abu Dhabi 2021, were they? They weren't until the error happened. So it's rather strange that we were getting a completely different reaction from Max Verstappen back in 2021, at that one race. But that's another video for the future. And the other things that the clips that I took evidence is Martin Brundle and how vile that human being is, in the fact that he will vilify Lewis Hamilton, Sir Lewis Hamilton, for his conduct, his racecraft, how he drives, and he'll constantly validate and boost Max Verstappen. And the clips that I took, when I hear it all the time in commentary now. Every time I watch a Grand Prix, I'm just hearing the same old barbed comments about Lewis Hamilton from Brundle, and the same boosting, validating comments about Verstappen. The guy is truly disgusting. So that's what the majority of those clips are about, plus the interviews and things. Just to go through this document first. So the stewards, having received a report from the race director, summoned documents 37 and 38, and heard from the drivers and team representatives, have considered the following matter and determined the following. Now, as I said yesterday, often in a Grand Prix, if there is an incident The stewards will look at the incident. They've got all the replays. They've got the telemetry. They can look at it. They can make a decision. They do not need to invite the teams to present their case. They make the decision. They impose the penalty, whatever they're going to actually make the judgment on, and say, right, we're judging. This is the situation. This is how we're going to deal with it. These are the penalties we're going to hand out. That's what they do. But when it involves Max Verstappen, it'll be, the stewards will deal with that after the race, not in the race, not award the driver a 10-second penalty in the race that they then have to serve at a pit stop or gets added onto their race time. Oh no, this gets dealt with after the race. Now that's not consistent. If you're taking part in any form of sport, you need consistency. If you're not getting consistency, it's not sport. You're playing it in something that's biased, that's weighted towards one competitor. And that's what we always see. This sport is weighted towards one competitor. That's a fixed sport. It's not acceptable. So, driver number 1, Max Verstappen of Oracle Red Bull Racing. Turn 1 incident between cars 1 and 44. Alleged breach of Appendix L, Chapter 4, Article 2D of the FIA International Sporting Code. Decision, no further action. What did I say? That was my prediction. Why? Because they're corrupt. Should it have got a penalty? 100%. The guy was out of control. If you are out of control, well, you're at fault. He's locked his brakes. He's hit the other car. He's at fault. He has caused a collision. That's the way it is. But look how the FIA validate not penalising. We see this. We see a lovely story. If you look at all of the other stewards' decisions, you get a 5 to 10 line paragraph. When it involves Max Verstappen, you get a story. And it's all bullshit. Okay? The stewards heard from the driver of car 1, Max Verstappen, and driver of car 44, Lewis Hamilton, team representatives, and reviewed positioning, marshalling system data, video, timing, telemetry, and in-car video evidence. On the approach to turn 1, both car 44 and car 1 overtook car 23. See, we're getting all of the story about what happened in the build-up, aren't we? When I go through the Abu Dhabi report that the FIA did, you will see exactly what they do there. It could have been written better by a child, I guarantee you. Car 44 returned to the racing line before the braking zone and commenced to turn into turn 1. Car 1 approached the turn faster than on previous laps. Like any of this matters. It's irrelevant. Okay? Oh, he was faster than on previous laps because he carried so much extra speed. Where are we? Due to DRS in brackets. And braked at the same point as previously. Right, so again, this is the validating. Oh, Max went so much faster due to DRS and he braked at the same point he always brakes at. Not true. We've seen him going down there with DRS before, unable to make an overtake. So this isn't congruent with what we all saw go on in that race, is it? The driver of car 1 argued that car 44 was changing direction under braking. So Max Verstappen can't take accountability for his actions. Instead, he has to lay the blame on the other guy. Max Verstappen can't hold his hand up and say, I got it wrong. Okay? I went in too hot into that corner. I locked up and I caused a collision. Sorry. No, it's the other guy's fault, claiming that Hamilton moved under braking. No, what Hamilton did was just brake and take a right-hand bend because that track goes round a right-hand bend. What's he doing wrong? At the braking zone, which is the point where you assess whether or not you need to afford any other car track room or whether you have the right to your line around that corner, Max Verstappen was not halfway alongside Lewis Hamilton. Therefore, Lewis Hamilton did not have to leave Max room on the inside. Lewis Hamilton was entitled to move his car across to the apex of that corner, across to that curbing on the right-hand side as he was taking that right-hand corner. They are the rules of engagement of the sport. If the other car is not halfway alongside your car or more, by the time you've got to that braking zone, you have the right to picking your line around that corner. The other car has to yield. Max Verstappen never does. Max Verstappen carries on, and if you don't get out of the way of him, he hits you. That's a totally unacceptable way of driving. It's a way of driving that causes collisions. It's a way of driving that will ultimately result in injuries and could potentially result in death. The FIA has a responsibility to the watching world, to all of motorsport, to identify what the problem is, to demonstrate what is acceptable and what isn't, and to make an example of wrongdoing. And they don't do it. Therefore, if such accidents occur due to new drivers in the sport behaving in the same way, copying that Max Verstappen style, and injuries or deaths occur, the liability of that is on the FIA. It's entirely their fault for the example that they are allowing to be set, and it is truly disgusting. Truly disgusting. So, Max Verstappen argued that Hamilton was changing direction under braking. Ridiculous. The driver of, and this is what the stewards have actually written in their report, rather than just simply dismissing it, rather than just saying, shut up. Here's the video evidence, shut up. No, they write it down in their validatory report. Oh, well, he said he was moving under braking, so that's the factor. No, it's not. The driver of car 44 stated he was simply following his normal racing line, which was confirmed by examination of video and telemetry evidence of previous laps. So Lewis has said, no, I've just done the same thing I always do to go around that corner. And even if he hadn't, it's irrelevant. Okay, he can choose the line that he wants to take. He hasn't got to take a set line around that corner. Okay, it's the other car has to do what he needs to do, right? Because he's got a car in front of him and you can't just run into it. So wherever that car that's in front of you goes, you've got to move your car so that you don't hit it. Okay, you're the car behind. If you hit it, you're the one that's responsible. So if he does move, if you're entitled to space, if you've got yourself to a position where you're entitled to space and he then pushes you off the track, that's a problem. But it wasn't at that situation at all. The FIA review Hamilton's telemetry. They review the evidence of whether or not Hamilton's telling the truth. This bit about Max Verstappen saying that he approached the turn faster than on previous laps due to DRS and braked at the same point. Well, have you reviewed the telemetry to say whether Max Verstappen did brake at the same point? Because I don't think he did. I don't think he did. Because he didn't lock up and carry arrow straight on every other time, did he? So what was going on there? And he had DRS previously, didn't he? Yes. And if you're approaching a corner, if you approach a corner that's a tight corner, in order to get round that corner, you have to be slower. That's the way it works. If you're driving and you are driving round a sweeping curve, you can maintain a lot of speed around a sweeping curve. If you're around a tight bend, you have to slow down a lot more to go around a tight bend. So if you're on the racing line, you try and take a sweeping curve around a corner to maintain speed. If you're diving up the inside, you have to take a tight line around that corner, which means you've got to slow down more, which means you've got to brake earlier. Otherwise, you brake, you sail past the apex of that corner and you run over to the other side of the track, running the other car out of room, making them have to deviate their line. That's what Max Verstappen does. That's the only way he can drive. He's demonstrated this for years. The guy is shit. The guy is a shit motor racing driver. He's a time trialist. said it numerous times before. Yes, he can get in a fast car and he can drive it around a track very quickly. And he can do that consistently well. He can do it lap after lap after lap. He'll moan about it if it's not quite right. He'll slate the team of lads that are trying to produce that car for him and make it as good as they can and do their best for him. Yeah, he'll moan at them. He'll treat them like shit. That's what Max does. Okay, but he can lap that car fast. But if there's another car up against him of a similar pace, Max doesn't know what to do. Max doesn't have racecraft. The only way Max can get by them is if his car has got a straight line performance speed of like 20 or 30 miles an hour faster, and he can just sail past them. And then the commentators of the sport will tell you, oh, look at that. That's the best thing you've ever seen. Well, it's just because the car's significantly faster. What defines a true racing driver is when they're in similarly paced machinery, they have the ability to work the other driver out, to set them up, to dummy them, to make the other driver defend. Okay, to slipstream. Slipstream is one form of things, but you still need the outright pace to carry the momentum into the corners and have the control of the car to get around that corner legally without running the other car out of track room. But the best of the drivers, they will be putting pressure on the guy they're trying to overtake. Hustle him, try and make him drive defensive lines around corners, which means that on exit of that corner, the guy that they're trying to overtake is slower on the acceleration, carrying less momentum down the straight, and therefore enabling the opportunity for the overtake. See, Max Verstappen doesn't do that. No, he hasn't got that in his armoury. You'll see Lewis Hamilton stalk a driver for lap after lap, seeing what his weaknesses are, seeing how he's going to do it, trying a little thing here, trying a little thing there, and eventually he'll work him out. And then we've seen him do that before and he's still attempting the overtake and the car's just not got it. But the best of the drivers, that is how they do it. Anyway, it was clear that car 1 locked up both front wheels on the approach to turn 1 prior to any impact occurring, but missing the normal cornering line for a typical overtaking manoeuvre. Look at the way it's written, it's just completely justifying Max, isn't it? It was clearly locked up both wheels, but missing the normal cornering line for a typical overtaking manoeuvre. The driver of car 44 stated that this was a racing incident. What are you doing, Lewis? Seriously, Lewis Hamilton, why are you saying this is a racing incident? That guy hit you once again, and you're just taking it. Why? Are you well? One of the reasons, the only justification I can think is you don't really need to say anything. The guy's making himself a fool, but the trouble is, there's too many haters that actually need teaching a lesson here. The new fan base of Formula One actually need teaching about the sport, and all that they're getting is validation for that. They think that that's acceptable racing. Lewis Hamilton, you need to man up, and that's the wrong term. I shouldn't use man up because it's not a gender specific quality to lead by example. Lewis Hamilton, you need to lead by example. And in doing so, you need to call out what is wrong with that style of driving. To lead by example, to demonstrate to younger drivers what is acceptable and what is not. And when it's not acceptable, you have to call it out. Now, we understand that mistakes can be made. We can understand that there are collisions due to mistakes. With Max Verstappen, it's not a mistake. Why is it not a mistake? It's because that's all he ever does. It happens time and time and time again. And it will continue to happen time and time again until something is done about it. Until somebody starts receiving penalties and until there is a consequence for wrongdoing, the perpetrators of wrongdoing continue to do it. Abu Dhabi 2021. Unless there is a consequence for wrongdoing, The perpetrators of that wrongdoing will continue perpetrating their abuse. That is the way these things work. Something needs to be done. So Lewis Hamilton, take responsibility. Justifying it, calling it a racing incident is not good enough from you, Lewis. Not good enough. So, and again, you look at the difference. The driver of car 44 stated that this was a racing incident, whilst the driver of car 1 argued that this was the case of changing direction under braking. So Lewis Hamilton, this is a Max Verstappen fault crash. Lewis Hamilton is letting Max off the hook by saying, let's just call it a racing incident. Max is trying to blame Lewis for it. That is the kind of turd of a human being that Max Verstappen is. Absolute scum. Max Verstappen is absolute scum. Hear that? And the strap-on fanboys that come here to troll the channel, you tried to present me as hating. I don't hate, okay? I observe based on the characteristics that I see. Characteristics that I've seen now for years. He's a vile human being, a turd of a human being. The guy is scum. Oh, dear me. The stewards do not consider this to be a typical case of changing direction. A typical case! Look at the way they even write this. The stewards don't consider this to be a typical case of changing direction under braking, although it's in our determination that the driver of car 44 could have done more to avoid the collision. So they're putting the blame on Lewis, okay, the victim of being hit, saying that he could have done more to jump out of the way. That is the FIA, that's the governing body. Accordingly, we determined that no driver was predominantly to blame and decided to take no further action. And then we've got this really strange statement at the bottom. Decisions of the stewards are taken independently of the FIA and are based solely on the relevant regulations, guidelines and evidence presented. Independently of these are the FIA stewards, and you're trying to say, oh, the decisions of the FIA stewards are independent of the FIA. Well, you're representing the FIA. So they are the FIA decisions. What are you talking about? Ridiculous. And what do we get, right? What does it then result in? Well, it resulted in Max Verstappen finishing 5th in that race, collecting 10 points, rather than receiving a 10-second penalty, rather than receiving penalty points on his super license, which could ultimately result in a race ban at some point in time. He gets 10 points. If he'd have got a 10-second penalty, he'd have been dropped down to 6th, would have only got 8 points. So there's two points he's been allowed to keep in the Drivers' Championship. Are they going to be significant come the end of the season? Probably not, because he's got such a massive lead that he built up in the first stage of the season anyway. He's probably not going to get caught. Okay? Even though he's got that position at the top of the championship and he's treating his team like absolute rubbish now. But we saw back in Austria, and I got it wrong in that first video when I was saying last week or 2 weeks ago. It was clearly Silverstone was the previous Grand Prix. I've missed that one out. The Austrian Grand Prix, where the collision with Lando Norris was, Max Verstappen caused that collision through moving under braking several times, and then after the collision tried to run Lando Norris off the track. Let that sink in. That's what he tried to do. Ultimately, Max was able to keep going in that race and pick up points. The guy that he crashed out wasn't. So Max gained points there. Wasn't penalised for then trying to run a competitor off the track and kept his points. All these things, as it comes to the final shakedown, are they going to be significant? Who knows? But the FIA aren't punishing him. Right, I'm mindful of the time. So I'm briefly just going to talk through some of the talking points of the race, and then we'll do the clips in the next video. So looking at the race, race start, Oscar Piastri got a very good start, got the jump on Lando, so congratulations to him. Shows that he's a good driver. He's not the finished article yet, but you can tell that that guy's got quality. Right from when he came into the sport, you could tell that this guy is going to be one of the better drivers that we see. Okay, he looks like he's going to be a future world champion, and if he's got the correct machinery and he's not sabotaged, then the guy should win. I would predict multiple world championships. Okay, providing the conditions are right. He looks as though he is of that caliber. He's not the finished article yet, but he looks good. Hamilton got a good start, um, and actually overtook Norris, but then got blocked off a bit with Verstappen, who had left the track, and through Hamilton having to just check himself a little bit, that enabled Norris to come back at Hamilton and retake Hamilton. So again, this notion of penalising the car that's done the wrong thing, gained an advantage by going off the track, well, he's then impacted other people's races as well. So just gifting one place back to Norris, well, who else has he affected? But oh no, we won't do anything there. We see all the racing going on, and we see, what did we see that was of note in terms of the racing? It was really the audio being played through that Max Verstappen was going on about the F1 TV narrative and Martin Brundle's vileness. That was just, yeah, that's for the next video, the follow up to this one, part 2. But in terms of the racing, why I put a thumbnail out about Lando Norris being a fool in that race was that clearly with McLaren, they're very concerned about trying to cover off Lewis Hamilton, and it seemed that they pitted Norris first, and that then meant that he was in a position to undercut Piastri, who was in the lead. And as a team, they did that strategy to ensure that Norris was at least secured in second. But it was to the detriment of Piastri, so they then wanted to restore that once Piastri had pitted. Now, where Lando Norris was a fool was that he then went to try and prove a point. He was like, well, no, I'm in the lead now, and if he can't catch me, then I'm going to win. Well, Lando, the team has made a strategic call on the grounds of trying to compete against other teams, all right, and get the best team result. What you should have done, Lando, is yielded that position immediately, drop back to the position you were before you were afforded that advantage. So drop back a couple of seconds and say, right, okay, I've restored the advantage that Piastri had on me prior to that round of pit stops, but now I'm going to track him down. Now I'm going to try and see if I can overtake him and validly overtake him for the Grand Prix win. And had he had done so, he probably would, because Piastri made mistakes in the latter part of that race and did cost himself some time. And it's highly likely that Lando Norris, putting some pressure on him, may well have won that race validly. But he was a petulant fool. And I don't respect that. If you can't have the respect for your team's decisions to do what they did for strategy on the grounds of what the team's seeking to achieve, and have respect for your teammate and the fact that you only got the jump on them in that circumstance due to a team strategy for a specific purpose, right? Then you're a shit human being. You're a turd of a human being. And that's what you were, Lando Norris. Let's be clear, you were a turd. So you, again, need to take responsibility for your actions. If you want to beat him fair and square, you beat him fair and square on the track. Now, I understand that there is this notion of saying, right, Lando is the guy that's looking like likely to be the main contender that can take the fight to Max Verstappen for the World Championship. Now, with that being the case, it's down for the team to say, okay, let's look at this situation. We're now in a position whereby we've got to focus on one driver to try to get the Drivers' Championship. So we're always going to give the team order of Lando finishing higher in the races where there's this conflict, where there's the two drivers running in the one after the other race order. The team order is always going to be, well, Lando's got to finish ahead because he's got to collect the more points to give him that better chance in the World Championship. It's better to not have to do that. It's better when both drivers are allowed to compete. But there comes a point in time whereby, if that's what you're seeking to achieve, you might need to do that. But it didn't appear that was the case in Hungary. So, there shouldn't have been the team order to rob a competitor of his maiden Grand Prix victory that he deserved through his driving. Okay, he took the lead of that race from the start with a great start and then kept that lead. And he only lost that lead due to pit strategy, which was done with the knowledge that, okay, we know we're going to disadvantage you. We know that this is going to cause you an undercut, but we're going to give you that back. We're doing this to protect the team from the other teams. So that's the way you've got to do it. You've got to be fair. And as I say, Lando should have been adult enough and taken responsibility to say, right, okay, I understand what the team's doing here. I'll drop back, but I still think I can beat you. So I've given myself 10 or 15 laps to try and beat you on the track. So he's a fool. Right, I'm going to wrap this one up here. I'm then going to do a second part where I'm going to go through the recordings of, like I say, the blank stream clips that I took that were the things we heard during that race and in the post-race interviews. Thank you for your time.